The Quran covers all this land long before the British conquest and its border definition in 1899, then where exactly in Misr has been the location of Moses and the Pharaoh's story? Has it been in the north of Misr towards today's Egypt, as was taught to us in the history books, or towards the south, currently known as Sudan? The Quran identifies the geographic location of the interactions between Moses and Pharaoh with extreme specificity, leaving no room for doubt. In fact, the Quran mentions 5 descriptions in its narration of Moses and Pharaoh's story: the western side, Yam, Madyun, Turwa and the Tor. The western side, the first location identified by the Quran, is where Moses learned from God that the confrontation with Pharaoh and his army is over. He also learned the timing of his escape with the Israelites from the tyranny of the Pharaoh. This specific location is identified as the western side of Mecca because God said to Prophet Muhammad, "And you weren't, O Muhammad, by the western side as we handled the situation with Moses, and you weren't one of the witnesses." Prophet Muhammad lived in Mecca at the time, and the western side of Mecca is northern Sudan. If anything, this tells us that the story of Moses and Pharaoh took place in what we now know as northern Sudan, or to be precise, in the southern part of Misr before the 1899 borders. By the way, it's worth noting here that back then there was not the land that is now called North Sudan. It was known as the Nubian Kingdom of Kush. Hence you can confidently say that Misr was in Egypt, Lower Misr, in addition to Kush, Upper Misr, until now the Abyssinian highlands. Kush was the home of people of dark skin called the Kushites, who built a strong civilization economically, politically and spiritually. In fact, the people of Kush built around 300 pyramids compared to the 60 pyramids built in Lower Misr, Egypt. There were always disputes between Upper and Lower Misr about who would rule Misr as a whole, and indeed the Nubian Kush or Upper Misr succeeded sometimes in ruling Misr as a whole. Eventually, the Lower Misr, Egypt, succeeded afterwards to control the reign of Misr as a whole. And since the story of Moses and the Pharaoh took place in the current north of Sudan, or in a more accurate description, at the southern part of Misr before the border division took place in 1899. This then means that the story of Moses and the Pharaoh took place in the land of Kush, or in the Upper Misr region, and that the Pharaoh that was referred to in the Quran is a proper noun for one of the kings of Kush, or Upper Misr, that is currently north of Sudan, and not Ramses II, the king of Lower Misr, Egypt, as narrated in some history books. In the Quran, Pharaoh says, "Aren't I the ruler of Misr, and these rivers are running beneath me, can't you see?" If we refer here to Egypt, Lower Misr, as we know it today, it is only one river, the Nile. Nevertheless, the Quran is referring to Upper Misr, which has many rivers. This again implies that the story of Moses and Pharaoh took